So this is great because this is one of my good friends, Jackie, and I was telling her I don't know, it's weird because I know and I've known, what she does for a living. She's an assistant superintendent, and I kind of knew like her education and stuff, but seeing it on paper to me is just very impressive. She's always been such a very positive person and has so much energy and is always like doing a million things. And I forgot she's got like a million degrees. Um, but she used to teach Audubon High School. So she's changed. Like I like seeing in some of our guest speakers where they started their journey here and they've gone in all these different directions. And it just reminds us like there's really no straight path to your dreams. But I hope you all learn a lot and get motivated. And I'll give it over to you, Jacqueline. And it's Women's Month too, which I love to see, like strong, educated, powerful leaders who are female, like showing others that they could do it. So thank you for speaking.
Yeah, no problem. No, thank you for asking me. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see your names, but I know you're out there, and kudos to all of you for just kind of sticking through COVID and distance learning. I know it's not easy. It's not easy for us as adults, and I know it's certainly not easy for you as students. So I'm excited to just share my story a little bit and see what kind of things you can take away from. And I was sitting in your seat just actually a lot of years ago, but quite a few years ago. So really, as we're going to spend this time together, I want us for you to think about like what and who do you want to be when you leave high school, when you leave going to a four-year university. There's so many things that impact that. And like Mr. Dasyuk said, it is absolutely a journey that can take lots of different turns. So really, I'm going to chunk what I'm going to share into three parts. Talk about the early years, how I grew up, and then also a little bit about my educational and career journey to see if that's maybe something interesting for you, for any of you interested in going into education, and just close with a few tips that all of you can maybe take away from and think about now. So my journey. I started off, I grew up in Oxnard, California. So that's where my parents were raised, raised me and my siblings. I have an older brother and an older sister. And my parents were born in Mexico. They immigrated to the United States. My dad came over when he was 18. He's from Zacatecas. And my mom came over when she was 8. And she came from Chihuahua. So she actually went through high school here in the United States in Oxnard. And then they met when they were in their early 20s. I share that with you because it's really important to me. It really is a part of my identity, being first generation, seeing the struggles my parents endured in order for my two siblings and I to really be raised in a very loving home. If any of you have Latino Mexican family, you know how important family is. For my parents, I will give them 100% credit for how we were raised, and also how dedicated they were that we went to school and that we succeeded. One of the biggest core beliefs that my parents instilled in us is that education is going to be that's your ticket to any and all opportunity. So that I would have to say is something I've taken away from and really has been a part of me. So I went to Hueneme High School in Oxnard. If you don't know where that's at, it's off the 101 if you're going towards UC Santa Barbara. So we were Hueneme High School. We were probably just about like 12 minutes away from the beach. So it's very much so a beach town, but it's also a very agricultural town. So at the time when I grew up, a lot of diversity. So I grew up with lots of different types of students, Latinos, white, Black, Asian, a lot of Filipinos. And it was beautiful because I got to experience lots of different types of experiences. Oh my God, move my chat over here.
I'm curious, Jackie, what did your parents do while they when you were little?
When I was young, my dad was an auto mechanic, and my mom, she worked as a speech therapist assistant in the elementary school district that I worked.
Oh, so she got into education. Awesome. Thank you.
You did, yeah, yeah. So it's interesting. Thanks for reminding me about that. My dad, although an auto mechanic, um, and amazing because that's how I've learned how to be handy. Or when I was growing up as a child, he also took classes to get his certificate so he could teach automotive technology at the community college. So early on, I saw my parents, they were modeling education all the time. So that was just a part of how I was raised. And again, a lot of kudos to my parents for setting that kind of stage for us. So yeah. All throughout high school, I had my older brother and older sister, and they all went to the same high school. And, I feel very fortunate because they were very smart. They excelled in all of their classes, and they served as a role model for me. So my older brother and my older sister both went to UC Santa Barbara, where I went to undergrad. So that really helped me. I know for some of you that you may be the first one that's going to college. I was the third one. But there's still some lessons that I just really got to see from both of them that helped my way and my path. So all throughout high school, I got involved with leadership with ASB. I did some community service. It was around the time there was an election going on, so I volunteered for the Clinton campaign. I volunteered at National Organization for Women. And there was just things that I was interested in as an individual and not connected to anything with my family, but it was just things that I was trying out and seeing what suited me. So that is another takeaway, is really find out what you're interested in. So it makes every day just that much more enjoyable. So for me, it was a non-negotiable for my parents for us to not go to a university firsthand. And that's just my experience. And so I applied to 4 UCs and landed on UCSB. I didn't want to go too far from Oxnard to Santa Barbara. It's just at the time it was probably about 40 minutes. But because I was familiar with the campus, my brother and sister had gone there, I wanted to make sure, it just felt right for me. And I'm so glad I made that decision. So walking into UCSB, really thinking, I thought all throughout high school, I wanted to be a pediatrician. I wanted to follow in my brother's footsteps. My brother's a surgeon now, but he was a microbiology major for undergrad because we've all really enjoyed the sciences. And walking into that, I'm like, okay, I'm a bio major and I'm going to go to medical school, and this is what I'm going to do. So started my classes. I got really involved with EOP and Chicano Latino EOP, and just that was just a safe place for me, and was a great way for me to also make other connections, like another set of family on campus. So through that, I really enjoyed my major, through my classes, and started to prep like I am going to go to medical school. So my third year in college is when typically you can take the MCAT, and that's your entrance exam for medical school. Studied for it. Is a beast of an exam. And studying for it, and took it through a summer. But I remember one moment when I was so stressed out, and I realized this is not what I wanted to do. So I remember driving from Santa Barbara to my parents' house and in tears, because my parents have just put this really high expectation for us that we needed to go to college. And I, in my head, thought that I needed to be a doctor and follow my brother's footsteps. and just being like, I needed to confess all this to my mom and tell her, Mom, I don't want to go to medical school. Like, I want to do something different. Like, there's, I was at the time, I was also doing like a little intern program where I was helping in the local high school, in science classes. And my mom does, I think, what I want to do. And she's like, this is what you've done to yourself. She's like, go be you and be happy. And we never wanted you to be anything other than just successful and happy in what you want to do. So I changed. I didn't change my major. I just changed my path. So I then stayed at Santa Barbara, and I started a teaching credential program so that I could teach high school, secondary science, middle school or high school. So from there, I realized I love it. I love teen students. I love adolescents. I love doing that work. So then I started looking for jobs, and I know I wanted to do something different than stay in Oxnard and Santa Barbara. Love my parents, but I wanted to try something different. So I moved to Pasadena, and I interviewed at Montebello High School and interviewed with the principal at the time and with the department chair, and got hired. So it was beautiful, and I loved working at Montebello High School. That was a really nice time. And that's actually where I met Mr. Dasyok.
Which classes did you teach at Montebello?
Which
I
class?
know it was science. Yeah, I know which subject. I know it was science, but it was biology.
It was biology, yeah.
Okay, and then it's neat to hear your parents, like they're from, being a teacher, you have all these stories of students and people that you've experienced, but most of the time, like, they're not as supportive, and they kind of want you to do what they want you to do. So, man, your parents are very open-minded. That's awesome to hear.
Yes, my parents, I'd say I feel lucky. Very open-minded. So from there, teacher, but then I also realized, well, I want to do something different. I really like the organization of schools, and I want to have a different kind of impact. So at the time, I am a learner. So, I still wanted to, I got another master's degree, another set of schools. So there's a kind of like these 2-year increments to get my master's in educational administration, because I knew I wanted to go in that way. I wanted to be a principal. So I did that, and almost immediately after, as I was in the program, I'm like, well, I also want my doctorate. So continued down that path and got my doctorate in education. So part of the motivation was, like I shared, I had 2 amazing models. I talk about my brother, who was a doctor. And so he had his MD, he went to medical school, but he also went and he got a PhD in biochemistry. So I think we were just a family of lifetime learners. So he actually has 2 doctorates. My sister also, when she went to Santa Barbara, she thought she was going to follow in our brother's path. And she got she started off as a biology major and changed. And she's like, this is not what I want to do. So she changed to a psychology major, and she ended up going to grad school, and she has her PhD in counseling psychology. So for me, I thought I need to have my doctorate too, and I want to extend all of my learning. And so I did that. So my path, now my career path, outside of being a teacher, then I moved and I got some other experiences, and I was a teacher on special assignment. So I was still a teacher, but I wasn't working with students anymore. I was working with other teachers and working around just teaching practices, coaching the newer teachers on how to be better teachers, like a teacher of teachers. And from there, we worked with a company that worked with Montebello at the time, who were consulting, and they were helping groups of teachers do kind of focused on some work. So they asked me like, hey, Jackie, do you want to come work with us? I'm like, yes, that would be really fun. But I'm also still working on my dissertation, my doctorate. So I'm like, and as soon as I'm done with my doctorate, I want to start getting an admin position. So I just worked with them for a year, but was really good experience. So like just thinking about that journey and getting something else going, it was a good fit for me. And I was able to work all up and down the state of California with different school districts and different groups of teachers, up in Stockton, in Bakersfield, lots of different places. But as soon as I got done with my doctorate, I knew I wanted to start looking for administrative jobs. So then I transitioned and I became applied for a lot of positions. And I became an assistant principal at Workman High School in La Puente. And that's just kind of where the rest of my admin career started. So I still loved high school. That's where my entire career has been. So going from assistant principal, moving into like a coordinator job, assistant principal, I did that for probably about 6 years. And then I became a principal at Chino Hills High School and loved it. It was everything that I wanted to do. So back to your journey and where life can take you. At that time that I was a principal, I was recently divorced. So not just your professional career life, but you also have life. So I had been married before, and it was this terrible marriage, and really happy that I got out of that. And not with someone who didn't share all my same values. And at the time I was single, I was divorced and working as a principal and very happy. And a friend of mine who was a superintendent up in the state of up in Sacramento reached out to me, and he said, Jackie, can you come up and work with me and be my assistant superintendent of personnel? We have a lot of work to do here. I'm like, ew, I don't want to go to Sacramento. I'm Southern California girl. Like this is where my life needs to be. But after processing, I'm like, you know what? I don't have children. I think this is a very cool opportunity because it continues my path. And so I went ahead and moved up to Sacramento area, and I became an assistant superintendent at the district office. So that structure at district office, you have these different administrator positions overseeing different parts of how the district runs. And so did that, and I stayed up there for about 3 years. But in my heart of hearts, I loved, that was probably one of my favorite jobs, just because I loved everyone I worked with. We were doing something really good for students and for the community and the families that lived there. But my heart just missed my nieces. My heart missed my family who was in Southern California. I was traveling a lot back and forth from Sacramento. So sad to tell my boss, my superintendent at the time. I'm like, I love this job, but I'm not supposed to be here. Like, I need to go back home. So I did that, went back to stayed as an assistant superintendent. I moved to Glendale and worked there. And then that was too long of a drive for me. I live in Brea. And so then I was reached out, and where I work in Riverside now. So I'm an assistant superintendent in Riverside, and I've been here for 4 years. And one of the best decisions I could make, because one, I live just about 20 minutes from my nieces who are juniors in high school, and I get to see them at least once a week. But also I get to be back in where I'm happy. So work life, had to consider that, personal life, and think about all of the things that bring you joy. During that time,
I have a quick question, Jackie, to give them like a context or an idea of what an assistant superintendent is. Is it a bad example to say, like, right, a principal is kind of like, right, he's in charge of all the teachers at the school and she's in charge of all the teachers at the school. An assistant superintendent or a superintendent is kind of like the principal for all the different schools in a way, where they're in charge of kind of running everything at all multiple different schools and organizing things. And it's really a kind of like the CEO of all the different schools in your district. Is that kind of like a little bit of what an assistant superintendent is?
That's like the best analogy. We're like the principal and assistant principal of the school district of all the schools. That's a really good analogy. Yeah, thank you. So I have specific duties that I'm in charge of. So like I shared, some people are really interested in personnel, and that's all what you take care of and can provide to employees, all the staff. Then you have folks that are in charge of curriculum and instruction, and that's really the direct supports to schools and supporting all the principals and the teachers. Where I'm at is more programs. So I'm in charge of our equity, access, and community engagement. So that's a big old long title, but a lot of that is all the relationships with our community members. It's some of the programs that we're offering for our different types of students and what they need, as well as some of the coaching that we do for principals and teachers. So thanks for that clarification. So I just want to pause there because I want to get to just how does this all relate back to you and things that that you can be doing now. This is just kind of a quick way to see, like, is education and going and being a principal something that's really interesting to you? For me, I mean, I think I went through pretty fast because I'm 46 right now, and my next step, I don't think I'm done yet. My next step is really to then be a superintendent. But I'm not in a rush for that position. That is a really big position. And in my life, I think I'm really happy where I'm at. So personal life takes place too. So I also have a partner. He's also an assistant superintendent in education. So he has another lived experience too. But he lives in Northern California. So he and I, so funny that, you know, I left Northern California to be back down, and then I meet this wonderful person who I've known for a long time. And then we connected, and now we're together, that we're able to go back and forth and still be together, but from both sides of the state. So I think about that too, because it's not just about the work, but it's also what makes you happy and fulfilled.
When I think of it, Jackie, I think of how, like, you never know how one thing leads to another thing, and how, right, you didn't really kind of want to go to Sacramento. I was like, ew, growth. I have family there. It's kind of sometimes gross. And even though you took the leap of faith and got really good experience, but you also met someone who's, you know, probably going to be your life partner. So you never know when one thing you're involved in or one thing you kind of stretch yourself and try can lead to something else or other people in your life.
Exactly. And I'll share too how I met him. So this is another part of things that make me happy. I'm a part of an organization called CALSA, California Association of Latino Superintendents and Administrators. That's a mouthful, but it really is a support network for it started off for Latino administrators, so principals, directors, superintendents, and so I was president 2 years ago. And really my take on that is that you don't need to be Latino to support Latino children. We're over 55% in the state of California. So Latino students make up more than 55% of all the students. And a lot of those are coming from Spanish-speaking homes. So for me, that is, that's where I'm passionate about. That's what drives, what makes me happy is to be able to support and serve students, especially Latino students, Latino, Latina, and Latinx students. So part of being part of this organization was almost this other kind of family that there's other people who are like-minded. And that's actually where I met him. He and I were both on the board together. He and I both had experienced divorce, and now we were able to both be divorced and then be able to come together. And beautiful. Yes, he is my lifetime partner. So it's amazing how life can take you in lots of places, but at the core is just things how I was raised, that education will always be your opportunity, and really drilling down what is going to make you happy. I didn't want to be unhappy in a marriage. I didn't want to be unhappy in a workplace. So I am the kind of architect of my own journey. And so I made those decisions to move in and out of kind of not perfect situations. So a couple things that you can do, especially in high school, is really figure out what you're interested in, because where you're looking at is what kind of major or major would get me to a career interest, but more so, what would you want to do? So I'm sure there's lots of different like assessments you can take, but even just figuring out, like, learn about lots of different things, and something will spark your interest. Another one is get involved, and it's to varying degrees. For some people, it's really being involved in a church or a volunteer experience. Get involved in something other than just school, because certainly when you're applying to schools, that is something to round out your application. But also there's a part of it that just, there's some joy in doing service for others, wherever if that's somewhere in school and you're doing some extracurricular activities, but also in your community. Maybe there's something that's really interesting that you can volunteer and do. So for example, like I still share this organization, that's all volunteer community service, if you will. But I get a lot of joy from doing that still. Visiting schools. And so this is really good, especially now that you can do some of these things virtually, is figure out, get the lay of the land of a university or college that kind of sparks your interest, and kind of see, can you picture yourself living there? Can you picture yourself walking to class every day? Can you picture yourself living away from your family? Now, that was a big decision for me, that I absolutely wanted to not, I could have commuted from Santa Barbara to where my parents live in Oxnard, but I wanted to experience living the whole college life. But that was a decision for me. So really, those are things that you can think through is, do you want to live away from kind of your family unit and experience that? Or do you want to commute? Because everyone does whatever is going to work for them. A big one is get a support system. So in my case, I had an amazingly supportive set of parents and my siblings. Not everyone has that. I'll share a little bit about my partner's story. So he grew up in Salinas. Both of his parents were worked out into the fields, and he's the oldest. And his parents were not supportive of him going to college at all. But for him, he knew in his heart of hearts that he needed to do that. So he went, and without like the blessing and support of his parents at the time, went to school in Davis. So between Salinas and Davis, it's about probably about a 2-hour drive. So he was very much so far away. Now, again, fast forward, parents just so proud of him. The rest of his siblings went to college because he set that tone. But he made those decisions for himself to do that in spite of his parents not being supportive. And so
I really like that, Jackie, what you're saying, because it's a good point that we don't always have that support system with our family and friends, but there's always a support system to be found. You can always find one. You have your coaches, your friends. I think they had a quote in the classroom from Oprah, something like, surround yourself with people who make you better, or, who are going to uplift you. But it doesn't have to be your family, right? We always have our other people we reach out to.
Correct. And he was able to find supports. He joined a fraternity who he's still super involved with. He started actually one of the first Latino fraternities over there. And also he got involved in sports when he was in college. So he hadn't created his support system because, again, you can't do this by yourself. It's really hard to do that by yourself. The next thing is financial stability and security. So all that to say is look for free money. I was on reduced lunch for free and reduced lunch. My parents did not have a whole lot of money. So I applied for tons of scholarships. Both my brother and sister and I did. We got some financial aid and applied for as many grants and free money as possible. And that takes a little bit of work to do that. But in the end, I knew I needed that. I needed the help to do it. And yes, right now, seniors are so busy right now looking for money, and it will help tremendously and help relieve some of the stress, because you do want to focus on school and or work through college, et cetera. And that you need that. So these are my really big key takeaways. And as you kind of just think through about the things that you're interested in, I really like this quote. The difference between who you are and who you want to be is what you do. What you do right now matters. And even at minimum, it's just exploring what is interesting to you. And again, you're the architect of your own future. So really settling into that, and that it's a journey. Life is going to take you in lots of places, but you really are the driver of that, and figuring out what is going to make you happy. So open to questions, or Mr. Dasiuk, if you want to ask me questions, or I'm all yours.
I just get this feeling, I could be wrong, I just get this sense that for you, it wasn't like, if I go to college and make this happen, it was more like, when I go to college and make this happen. It seems you were very determined and set. And like you said, you had very good role models and support system. But do you have any, probably a really difficult question, where do you find your motivation? Like when things were getting rough, was there anything in particular you remember doing or thinking when you felt like you were going to give up?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think at my core, I like to be happy and find joy in what I do. So just a part of who I am, I need to be happy at all times, and figuring out what that was. And in the hard situations, coming to the realization that if something is not bringing me joy and being happy, and again, you're not going to be happy all the time. And work is hard, and there's like good days and bad days, but I still find joy at the core of what ultimately I'm doing. So I go back to that. If I'm not going to be happy, and
awesome. I think that's a kind of new thing too for Latina women and for women in general, because I just spending so much time with my mom, the opposite is true. She had like, no, I shouldn't be happy. No, I will stick through misery if that's what I need to do to sacrifice. So for her, it was always sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. And she almost felt like, to me, it seems like she feels almost like, no, I don't deserve to be happy sometimes. So it's awesome to see that kind of drives you, and that it's okay to want to be happy. It's okay to want to have a better life. And that's something that you should be proud of and go towards.
Yeah.
Let's ask some questions. Anybody? Sorry to interrupt. No. Anybody who has questions, please. But go ahead, Jack.
No, and I think that's a layer of being first generation and just being very tied to my culture and being Mexicana, is that there's some stereotypes associated with that. And again, there's a lot of influence from your family. In my case, it was super positive influence, but it's still a big influence. And I recognize that not a lot of families, or individuals have that. I feel blessed.
You also get both perspectives. Like, remember Miss Yamaguchi, her dad worked for NASA. So when she became a teacher, he was disappointed in her. Like, that was a step down for her. Whereas me, my parents, we didn't have any education. My dad only went to 6th grade. So when I became a teacher, they were like, wow, you're amazing. So it's even that you'll get sometimes parents who see everything success, all your success, and celebrate it. Others who sometimes they have a hard time celebrating your successes with you. So someone had asked any regrets or advice from high school. And then someone else asked, do you regret not finishing or going to medical school ever? I don't think you look so happy, but go ahead and answer.
Regrets or advice? Regrets, I think, not anything major. I do think about medical school every now and then when I'm having not a great day at work, and I'm like, I wonder what it would be like. And I've thought about it more during COVID, of just how much the healthcare system, how many nurses and physicians are, just the impact they're making. And I'm like, oh, I wonder how life would have been.
But one of the persons says, do you have advice for how to not have regrets? For my point of view, it feels like just do it. Just do it. Just go do it. Go get involved. Don't doubt yourself. If you're in doubt, just go do it. Yeah, that would probably be one of my ways that I would say how not to have regrets. I have a lot of regrets. I didn't do things. I was scared. I was too scared to go dance. I was too scared to go try this or that or talk to this or that. And I lived a life of quiet desperation and fear.
Don't. You just got to do.
But we changed. That's, it's everybody in their little baby step time. More questions, because we only have like a minute or two, but we really want to get as much as we can from Jackie before she has to go. Even if you're not sure if it's a good question, ask. What were some things I wrote down? It's weird. It must be weird to have supportive parents. Sometimes my dad was not supportive. It's neat to see that your partner, like, you have such different stories and can kind of respect how both of the situations were different, and yet you both ended up right now as assistant superintendents. Totally different journeys. Any other questions? I'm not seeing any. I was going to ask you what someone already asked, like, did you have any regrets? But no, I don't know. Was there ever a time where you felt so much pressure, other than you probably mentioned at the time where you decided to change your major? That was probably feels like life or death at the time.
That felt like life or death at the time. And I think there's always pressures. So even right now, that there's a lot of pressure, expectations of, Jackie, you need to go and start looking to be a superintendent now, that you need to do this next step. Always what's going to be next. And so I have to battle myself of like, I am finding joy in my job now. I'm finding joy in my personal life. And so just be and just exist and just be settled.
From my point of view as a teacher, I understand, like, a superintendent, assistant superintendent, you're in charge of like hundreds of teachers, or maybe sometimes thousands of teachers and tens of thousands of students. I understand it's a really big deal. So the last question I would ask, I know we have to go, but what has it been like to do all of this and go through this journey as a Latina woman? Has that been a lot of challenges and people who did doubt you because you're female, or because you're in a position of leadership, which traditionally didn't allow women or minorities in those positions until more recently?
Yeah, that's a whole other challenge in itself, and a set of expectations that people did not think. I'll give you one expectation, that when I was even first hired in Riverside, there was an expectation that I was just filling a box. They needed a Latina to sit in the seat that I'm to be able to be in that job, for kind of what the optics were. In Riverside, we're about 45% Latino. Okay, we need someone sitting in a seat that is Latina. And so having...
I see that a lot with good, like, people who are pretty, let's say, and they're like, well, she's just pretty, that's why she got that job. And they completely dismiss any of the reality of actually working. So someone said, that's kind of what she means, Desiree. Was it a diversity hire? Like, they think, oh, she's just a minority and they want her on the board. That's a good term, a diversity hire. But no, right? You're capable. I know you're very, very capable and way more talented than any other male who is sitting in that seat.
I agree. And that's where, especially for young women, that I even told my boss, I'm like, so you realize that you didn't get just this Latina. I go, I'm pretty badass. I go, I'm good at what I do. and a leader. I just happen to be Latina. That's all value added. So it's a constant battle of expectations.
And I think that's the reverse is true in a sense. Sometimes like there are people trying to find Latinos and minorities and women and to give them more opportunities just because we haven't given them, and it's just been a historical thing that is always been wrong. But thank you very much. If anybody has anything else, but everybody else, if you can go ahead in the chat at least and thank her, that'd be great. But I really appreciate hearing your journey. Jackie, please ask a question if you have any, but you're to me very inspiring as a role model and a leader. And I just know more and more is going to come too, that you're just so dedicated to helping young people. So I'm proud of you, and it sounds weird saying, but I'm proud of you.
Thank you